Unfinished, an analysis of megalithic construction in Egypt. You are listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents. This is Brothers of the Serpent podcast, and we are coming to you not live from the 10x10x10 tangent cube of science, where we are nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Everest Plateau. So this ought to be interesting. Today's episode is going to be a podcast version of a slideshow / video presentation that I've been giving on some of these trips about stuff that we noticed in Egypt. Yeah, it's a fun presentation. We'll see how it goes on the podcast. We will try to keep in mind that many of you are listening and not watching, but I will recommend that you're going to need to go watch this to see all the visuals. Because I've got like 180 slides. Well, 181 because Kyle just added one right at the last minute. He was like, "You need this," and he's right. It needed it. So yeah, we got the Watcher with us. He is tuning in from deep beneath his secret space station in secret outer space. Watcher, how you doing, buddy? You there?
Very glad to be here.
Oh yeah,
as always.
And
good to have you, Benny.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And what did you think of the old Utah trip?
Oh man, absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
good people, good times. Great environment, man. Easy to feel at ease, around everybody there.
Yeah,
easy to feel at ease.
Yep,
is always a, how can you go wrong? How can that not be a good time?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you only needed to break out your emergency medical bag like 5 or 6 times to save lives.
Yeah, there was a cut from a wooden sword. There was a couple other small emergencies, but yeah, no, everybody was very responsible.
Yep.
Managed not to hurt themselves, which was great. Because
the
less I have to do, the better it is.
Yes, but it is great to have somebody like you there. So then everybody's like, oh, we have an EMT. Well, we can just go crazy.
Yeah.
It's like having a healer in your group. You're just like, well, I'll be fine. I'll go.
Yeah,
I'll go jump
just go
off
storming off into a group of orcs, with a stick. It's fine. Somebody will take it.
That's right. That's right. So the Snake Bros Meetup is coming up. It is actually this weekend.
I was just thinking of it just reminded me of the video where the guy, what's his name? He runs off, right? And he's like, what was his name?
What?
Leroy Jenkins.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it was.
That's what it was.
You can Leroy Jenkins when you got a Watcher
When
with
we got
you.
the Watcher with us. That's right. That's right. So yeah, Snake Bros Meetup is coming up. It's going to be fun, hopefully. Are we going to have water?
There will be water to swim in.
Water to swim in.
But I don't think
may
we're
not
bringing
be
kayaks.
May not be kayaking, yeah.
I've been looking at the weather. It doesn't look like it's happening. But I will call the guy and just see what it's like. He would know if people are kayaking by at his place. So we'll find out.
That's right. It's going to be fun no matter what. There's other stuff to do. So
yeah, we'll do some hiking. We'll do some hanging out. We'll do some swimming in the swimming hole. And,
do some jamming.
It'll probably be really hot during the day. So we'll probably, mostly be up at night.
Yeah. During the day, we'll just be sitting in the water with beer. That's what you do.
That's right. It'll just be very relaxed and chill.
That's right.
But yeah, we can still go to the park nearby and do some hiking and whatnot.
Yeah.
So,
all right,
we never fail to have fun.
Let's tackle some space weather news. There it is. From spaceweather.com, where we get all our space weather news. Possible Cme Impact on May 10th. A magnetic filament on the sun erupted May 7th, hurling a CME into space. NOAA analysts say it might deliver a glancing blow to Earth's magnetic field on May 10th. This is a low confidence forecast. Minor geomagnetic storms are possible if and when the CME arrives. Also, total lunar eclipse on Sunday, May 15th, which is the end of our Snake Bros trip. There will be the full moon will pass through the shadow of Earth, producing a total lunar eclipse. And they have a NASA animation that shows how the moon will turn red for almost 85 minutes. It will be widely visible from the Americas on May 15th, and Africa and Europe on May 16th. There is a chance that this eclipse will be affected by the eruption of the Tonga volcano from January the 15th. During a lunar eclipse, most of the light illuminating the moon passes through Earth's stratosphere, where it is reddened by scattering. Volcanic ash from Tonga reached an altitude of 30 kilometers deep into the stratosphere with a total mass of 400 million kilograms. The volcano's lingering exhaust could shape the eclipse, making it a deeper, darker red than usual.
Cool. Yeah, so the meetup starts on Friday the 13th.
That's right.
And ends
with a freaking giant
Sunday
blood moon.
It's Sunday night, right?
Yeah,
We're not going to be there.
Right.
We'll have left. But yeah, there's a blood moon.
Yeah.
Friggin' eclipse.
Lunar eclipse.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
I wish we would have booked
We
Monday.
are all going to die.
We should have booked Sunday night.
Yeah, we should have.
Dang it. Maybe we can just make that happen.
Yeah, we'll just tell them we're staying another day, you know. Current conditions, solar wind speed, 308.2 kilometers per second. The density is 8.15 protons per cubic centimeter. Sunspot number right now is 89. Neutron count, very low, 5.9% above the space age average. That might be one of the lowest readings we've seen. And the KP index is 1, quiet, and the 24-hour max was 3, which is the top end of the quiet range. And that is your space weather news for the week.
All right,
Let's see what's happening with crypto. Hold on.
I do have news stories piling up, but we'll do that with a communications sode.
Yes, we're going to have a communications sode because we have, like I said, 180 slides, and I don't know. I'm not doing any emails. Just going to dive right into it. Yeah. So, Bitcoin, $30,504. And Ethereum, $2,237.46.
All right.
Man, it is time to buy in right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's good.
We got ag update.
It's going to crash. It's going to go all the way to zero, folks.
That ought to be fun.
Well, we just need to keep the numbers down right now.
Yeah.
Until we buy in.
Okay. All right.
And then we can tell people it's going up to 800,000. No, I don't have an ag update. I've just been working on wine.
Okay.
I mean, it's hot. We're trying to kill grass. There you go.
That's right. Okay, well, let's start on this presentation. So this is about things we've noticed while traveling through Egypt, and then I've started to put stuff together after the trip. I'm constantly working on this thing and adding things to it, but the general premise is, well, there's multiple things that happen here. As you're walking through Egypt, you notice, and I've said this on the show before, you notice the differences between these dynastic temples with the columns and the open. They're very open and airy. Like when you're walking through them, they seem clearly designed for people to be in them. Versus places like being inside some of the pyramids down in the Osireion. Well, the Osireion does seem maybe like it was designed for people, but in the pyramids, it's more like walking around in a machine because you're crawling through tunnels, and it doesn't seem the same as these open temples. So there's that difference. The other thing that happens is that these temples with the columns, every wall, every column is full of writing and imagery, like they're speaking to you, like everything.
And the ceiling, I mean.
Yeah, the ceiling, everything, every surface.
Except the floor.
That's right, is covered in imagery. And then the floor is like this sometimes beautiful crystalline stuff. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's like the temples are all telling you stories. It's like a library in stone, every single one of them. Every surface is covered in beautiful artwork and, you know, millions of glyphs. Whereas when you're walking through the Osireion or in the pyramids, and even in places like the Valley Temple, the walls are silent. But what's interesting is that the minds of the builders of these places are not silent. They're speaking to you in a different way. Even though there's no glyphs, there's no story, there's no images on the walls. It's like there's this sense of communication, just in a very different manner than a lot of the dynastic Egyptian temples. So we're going to look at some of that as we go through here. And the first place we're going to look at is, let's see, what's going on? There we go. So Giza Plateau. Obviously, the center pyramid there, that's Khafre, and then the pyramid on the upper right of this image is Khufu. That's the Great Pyramid. But what we're going to look at today is Menkaure. This is the
and that line is not the shadow of a giant UFO. That's a Google Earth.
Yes,
different day picture.
Yes, Google Earth, different days. Anyway, we're going to look at the least popular pyramid on the Giza Plateau, Menkaure. This is the small one. But I wanted to, when we were there, I talked to Ben about this. I was like, I really want to get over to this pyramid because I wanted to see the remnants of the casing stones on this structure. So we're going to start with that. So this is us walking up to Menkaure, and you can see, let me go back to this image here. So we walk up this pathway here.
Coming to it from the north.
Right, coming to it from the north. Like you can see where all the buses park, and then you come over here and walk up this path, and this is where the entrance is. So now, one of the things you notice when you're going through Egypt is you have to look through thousands and thousands of years of cultural layers. And you can see it in this picture really easily. This right here is modern.
The walkway.
The walkway. Yeah. Leading up to it. This is not ancient. The question is, and then some of this over here, like we don't, what is this? Is this Middle Kingdom? Could this be New Kingdom? Don't know. But there's structures like this all over the place where you just see layers and layers of stuff. So sometimes it can be very difficult to determine what exactly it is you're looking at. What's the oldest stuff? Because, it's like geology does this too. Geology has two things. There's erosion and deposition. Erosion is like geological processes tearing down materials. And then deposition is geological processes placing materials. And cultures do this too, but it can be a lot more complex. So somebody could come in here and have a structure and they take part of it apart and repair it. And that's like erosional and depositional in the same structure. And you see that all over Egypt, like some structures that have been rebuilt or repaired over and over and over again across thousands of years, all the way up to the modern day. So you have to wonder, sometimes when you're looking at this, what exactly are we looking at? So the place I want to focus on here, what we're focusing on with this pyramid specifically, are these casing stones that are remnants down here. And one of the things I want to say about the casing stones, now Kyle and I have talked about this on the podcast, about them being like the roofing material.
Yeah.
So if you think of you build your house, or any structure today, you build it out of wood, plaster, all these different materials that aren't necessarily going to survive the elements. So you install a roof on the thing, and then on the roof specifically, you put tiles or shingles, and the common element on these things, shingles or tiles, is stone. Like a common roofing shingle has basically a stone gravel.
Right.
In a tar matrix.
Stands up the best to the sun and water and all that.
Exactly. So what we're looking at here, the casing stones on this pyramid and also all of the other pyramids, they were cased, and those were the roofs of these structures. So it was to protect this core material that we're looking at here.
Yeah, the core material in many cases was easier to get, softer stone. It was quarried from nearby.
That's right.
And then the casing stones were often harder to get. They came from further away, and they were of a harder material.
That's right.
So they only made one layer of those, and that's all it needed to be the roof.
Right. So the area that we're gonna focus on is right here. So I'm outlining this. This is an area right. This is the entrance to this pyramid. And the reason we're going to focus on it is because what's been done to the casing stones here. But let's go through some images first to get a feel for the nature of these structures on this pyramid. So this gives you kind of scale of these blocks. They're huge. They're not the biggest blocks you've ever seen, obviously, but these blocks are not small. These and the courses are very tall, like maybe half the height of a human, of a normal person. And then the width of some of these stones is, 6 feet, sometimes maybe 8 feet. And then the depth, like it's hard to see here, but the depth of the stones is also, they go into the pyramid to sit on the core blocks. And sometimes that can be very far as well. So it's interesting how they were doing this. And, again, this is the roof of the pyramid. And just in this picture, for those of you listening, there's all these interesting marks. There's nubs and there's scoops taken out. Down at the bottom, there's lots of scooping. I'm kind of pointing it out here with the arrow. Let's move forward here. Yeah. There's more scale, but you can see how they've been scooping on these blocks. But again, the nature of the face of these stones is that they're pillowy. That's the word we've been using. They're kind of puffy, like they aren't finished. They're not flat. And this is very like some of the work you see, the stonework you see in Peru, that there's this heterogeneous style. Now, with the casing stones on this pyramid, it's less heterogeneous, more homogeneous, because these needed to match the core masonry courses. So there are constant horizontal lines. Each course is clearly defined, whereas in Peru, you'll see it waving up and down. The course line may be going up and down. It's not homogeneous. So these are more brick-like because of what they're matching to the courses of the core masonry. Now, I imagine you could have made them. They could have made them like more difficult in interlocking. But in this case, they chose to match the core masonry, and maybe that's, I don't know, do you think that could have been about difficulty? Like, clearly they could have made this more complicated, but they chose to match the core masonry in terms of courses. So yeah. I've been thinking about this.
I mean, knowing some of the difficulty that they dealt with, I don't know that would be the decision maker. It seems to make sense though to design them to fit the courses. I don't know.
Yeah. And maybe not all of them did. We only have the bottom few courses. Now, I've talked to Ben about this, and he's saying that one of the questions is did this granite casing go all the way to the top of this pyramid? And it's possible that it didn't, maybe it went up, a third of the way. And then after that, it was the Tura.
Yeah.
So that would have been very beautiful. You have this granite, by the way, is Oswan Granite. So it is quarried from like 500 miles away down the Nile, or up the Nile, but down south.
Yes.
Whereas, like Kyle was saying, the core masonry was gotten from nearby, but the Tura, I can't remember this. Do they know the source of where they got the
Tura comes from the other side of the Nile.
Okay.
It's from the reason why it's called Tura is because there's a place named Tura.
Oh, okay.
There.
But it's like chert almost.
Yeah, it's basically like a high silicate content limestone that is. I've always looked at it as it's like on the way to becoming flint. It's almost flint, but it's not quite as pure. So I think it probably has a much higher calcium content than flint does, because flint is it's like almost all silicates.
Yeah.
So there's calcium in there, but it's very, very fine. It's extremely hard. It doesn't you can hit it with a steel hammer and the hammer will bounce off of it. It's not right. like softer limestones. You can hit it and it kind of dents the limestone.
Right.
Or just bust some sand off of it. Like we've seen some sandy limestone in Egypt. I think the what's the pyramid next to the Red Pyramid?
Yeah.
Very sandy. And then the Red Pyramid is actually, the sand is eroding
like
because they took the Tura limestone casing stones off the Red Pyramid.
That's right.
It's eroding and there's like this giant pile of sand all the way around.
That's right.
The pyramid.
It's red sand.
It's red sand that's coming off of those blocks. So there's all different constitutions of limestone. People ask like, well, how hard is limestone? How quickly does it erode? Well, that just depends on the constitution. And I would imagine the degree of crystallization So Tura, to me, like when I looked at the Tura stones, it reminded me of some of the hardest chert that we have here in the hill country, which is very fine. When you break the chert open, it cleaves like glass. It may be a little more rough, but it kind of has the same sort of shapes as like a flint stone when you're chipping it, and it's very smooth on the breaking, and you can grind it, but it's harder, right? It's just much harder.
Yeah. So again, I'm going to point out there are these nubs on some of these blocks, and it's interesting how sometimes these nubs show up in rows. Not always, but you can see them in rows, like along this third course down here on this image, and then the second course down there across here. And I've just wondered about this. We'll see some of this later as well, where the nubs are. So I just want to point that out in this image. And again, note how rough the faces of these blocks are. All right, let's move forward here. Yeah, so here's some nubs. These are at the very bottom, obviously, and they look like they've been sheared off. Like they've actually been, that they may have extended out much farther than that, and they've been cut off, maybe perhaps for convenience sake. Don't know, but again, this is about looking into the minds of the builders, like, because we've seen blocks like this with nubs on them, and sometimes the nubs will extend out 10, maybe 12 inches. But these look like they've been cut off. But again, going back to this image, you can see how they're roughly faced. So maybe a lot of these have been sheared off, but they're not. But the blocks themselves haven't been faced yet, so they didn't really cut them completely off. They're just getting them out of the way, perhaps for scaffolding or other. I don't know. It's just really interesting to wonder.
I would speculate that some of the bigger blocks, like in the last picture, the one in the middle that's real pillowy and large, doesn't have any nubs. But I bet it did on the sides that they ended up facing.
Yes.
To put it in.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So that one was like, the ones that have nubs, those were where they left nubs when they were taking it out of the quarry.
Yeah.
And the ones that don't, like they were turned 90 degrees or something and put in this way. And so the nubs were faced off of them on the sides.
Right, because another thing I need to point out is that even though these blocks are very rough on the front faces, the faces we're looking at here, on the sides, they are fit incredibly finely to each other. And we'll see some of that as we move forward here.
The other thing you can notice in some of the unfinished faces on some of the blocks is that they look like they're almost vertical. Like a lot of the blocks look angled, like they're somewhat matching the angle of the pyramid, but then other ones are like square.
That's right. Yeah.
So they're not matching the angle yet. So it's clear to me that they planned to come.
Yes. They were
them into the
planning
slopes.
to come. Yeah. So this is the question we're approaching slowly as we look through these pictures is, did they plan to face this entirely? So what I'm pointing out with this image is reverse nubs. There's one there and there, and you can see it on this and this.
Sockets.
Sockets.
Like
yeah.
Notches.
Like notches in the bottoms of the blocks, possibly for maneuvering. I don't know what they were for. Here's some more of them, real clear.
Yeah, lifting notches, or lifting eyes, or whatever. Yeah.
And then again, you see how rough the front face of this block is, and this one, and all the ones in this picture. They're very rough. And here we go. So you can see lots of interesting stuff. This block here looks scooped a bit. Mm-hmm. These may be quarry marks, maybe done at the quarry. This one also is scooped horizontally instead of vertically. This one has 2 vertical scoops in it going down into the sand at the bottom. And then up here, let's see if I can zoom in on that. We can see a very fine face on the side. Because this, either this is missing a block or it was intended to be faced to this one. And so let's go back and talk about what we're looking at here in terms of the facing. Why do we still have these casing stones and not the rest? Well, this place was quarried by people who wanted the granite and possibly the Tura. If the granite casing stones went up 1/3 and the rest of it was done with Tura limestone, all those are gone. But there's granite rubble all around this pyramid, just all around it, from the quarrying efforts of much later peoples who were using this as a source of high-quality granite with fine faces on it, rather than having to go 500 miles, up the Nile to the quarry to get this granite. So this was close by and easy to get. So they were quarrying it to make millstones, and we'll see one of those as we move forward in the picture, an unfinished millstone. So that's why this doesn't have the roof anymore. And the reason why these few courses are left on this face is because there was so much rubble from the quarrying efforts of the courses above this that it actually covered the rubble, covered the base of the pyramid up to the level of the top of this casing. So you can't. So they didn't dig it out. It's like this was protected by their own quarrying rubble, basically. And so the archaeologists came in with machinery and dug this out to find the entrance, I guess. I don't know. I'm not sure. But they moved all the rubble away, and that's why these casing stones still remain. Here's more facing on the sides. It looks to me like these two blocks were intended to go next to each other, but they're just sitting up there. And then we're going to look closer at this right here, where you can see how the casing stones have been matched to the core masonry.
Now that top bit there looks like mortar to me.
It does.
The top piece of the limestone.
Yeah.
It's sitting on, there's mortar between the limestone and the casing stone above it.
Yeah. It's interesting how rough it is, though.
But I did take some time I went and looked at a lot of the mortar, because in many cases on the Great Pyramid, there's mortar sticking out.
Yeah.
Because the mortar is now much harder than the limestone rocks core masonry itself. So the limestone core masonry is eroding away, and the mortar joints are sticking out.
Yeah, that's right.
And they're extremely hard.
Yeah.
So that's what that looks like to me, just from looking at the other definite mortar.
This right here could be mortar, is what you're saying.
Yes.
This
and
bit.
It was eroded, right? It is heavily eroded, but it just, in the case of the Great Pyramid, where it was like sticking out in some places, it was just much harder.
Yeah.
But it does look a lot like the limestone. So I don't know what they were making it out of. But.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the surface we're going to focus on here. So we've talked a lot about why this might have been surfaced, flattened, faced like this. And the question is did they do this because they were installing an entrance? But the problem is that there's another flattened surface around the side, which we'll look at in a bit. And as far as we know, there isn't a door over there. So that's interesting. And it made me wonder if maybe when you're doing this job, you have 4 crews, and there's 4 crews, and each crew has a job to face that side of the pyramid. And you start with this, and this might be an alignment. Kyle and I were talking about this earlier.
Thought.
Yes,
I think that maybe these flattened surfaces were made to align as you're going up the pyramid with the casing stones. Once you get your angle set, you flatten one piece near the base.
Yeah.
On each side, and that gives you the ability to set a tool and say this is the angle.
Yeah.
And then from there you can kind of shoot over the pillowiness, but as the masons are putting further blocks going up, they can check the depth and make sure that the blocks are sticking out far enough to where when they get faced, that they will be flat with no holes or gaps.
That's right. Absolutely. So this may have been some kind of precision, or alignment tool,
but
or face.
I still think that the door argument is valid as a reason to flatten this particular spot.
Yeah.
Because in many cases, as Petrie described, there are these hinging, I don't remember what they're called. Prism blocks.
Prism blocks.
They are designed to rotate with fairly little effort out, so it opens up the passageway where you can get in.
Right.
In order to have it hinge properly and close nicely, you would need those pillowy surfaces to be flattened. I mean,
Yes.
if you couldn't do it with like a giant pillowy block because it wouldn't roll. Like the corner that needs to come back into the interior structure wouldn't be able to do it if it was pillowy.
Right. So the prism block has to be flat, and the rest of this needs to be flat as well. Just kind of get, so that's what's interesting is there's this nice square flattened area right around the entrance. There's another one around the east side of the pyramid that we'll look at in a bit. But the question that I had in my mind was, did they intend to do this to the whole pyramid, and they didn't finish the job? So one thing I'll mention real quick, this right here, some of you may notice this if you're watching. There are some glyphs here, but this amounts to 19th dynasty graffiti. So it is actual hieroglyphs, but this is, these pyramids on Giza are considered by the standard model to have been built in the 4th dynasty, Old Kingdom. 19th dynasty is New Kingdom. It's like 1,000 years later or something. I don't know the specific numbers. But there isn't any 4th dynasty writing on this. This is much later. And then again, looking at this flat surface, notice, and I'm pointing this out here on the images, notice how whatever tool they were using or whatever their method was, it doesn't matter they don't seem to care where the blocks end, and it has this radius. And in some cases, they removed up to 12, maybe 18 inches of material from these blocks. This was a big job. I mean, you're removing a lot of material. It looks like they took a giant belt sander to it. Almost.
Yeah, it's got a nice big sweeping curve at the edges there.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's another look at that same side. And keep in mind also that this is a pyramid, so it's angled. So I'm taking this picture, I'm looking up.
Another thing to think about in this photo for future, because we are going to talk about this at some point, but this is a great illustration of blocks going around corners.
Yes.
So they laid these courses all in a line, and then when they flattened these, at the edges, if there was a wall that was going to be extended out at the edge of where they flattened it here, these blocks that were flattened up to that point would look like they were going around
the corner. That's right.
So,
Absolutely.
Anyway, we'll see some of that later.
Perfect.
And we need to take a break.
We do need to take a break. We will be right back. 5 slides. We did 5 slides.
We are back, ladies and gentlemen, Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Continuing on with the presentation here on the, what is it called? The Unfinished.
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 That's right. So let's move forward through some slides here. We're still looking at this flat area on the front of Menkaure, the small pyramid on Giza. This is the other side. Again, I'm looking up, taking a photograph, looking upwards. So those bottom blocks are basically at my eye height, and you can see, again, there's this radius where the whatever tool they were using stopped the facing, and look how much material was removed. I wish I had something in here for scale to show you, but again, this is probably a foot of granite.
Yeah, we'll have to get something for scale in there next time.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Here's another look at it, and again, you can see the radius of the tool. Really interesting. And I love how it just doesn't, it doesn't seem to care where the blocks start and end. They wanted this square.
In this one, it looks like the tool may have been taller than one course of block. So they run it from side to side. And then, they go past this lower course here.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll have to look at that closer, too.
Yeah. So here's the lower part of the right side of the flat face. And I just want to point out this interesting little feature right here. We were talking about blocks going around corners. So this is just, what is the decision that you're making here? We were talking about how the in general, the blocks match the core masonry, but this one seems to go, around its own little corner here. So they're just giving it a little bit of a lock. I love this. There are these little details in these structures that you see where you're just like, you understand that the masons are just like, yeah, we're freaking awesome. That's why we did that. Why do we do that? Because we're badass. So this image, Ben sent me this. So I just have the one. This is the flattened face on the east side of the pyramid, which is, we're about to go around that side, but I just wanted to show this picture. This is one where it's flattened and there isn't a door. So like Kyle was talking about, could this be for, aligning your angles? What would be the right term? Surveying, possibly you mounted something here to check, to look upwards and check.
Yeah, it's like you're preparing the proper angle and surface before they lay the rest of the courses up there, so you can make sure that those courses are all going to match that angle.
Right.
Because you can imagine, as let's say the masons are going up further and they're way up there, because all of the faces of the blocks are pillowy, you can't look down and eyeball and say, okay, yeah, these are roughly in the same, they're, in other words, they need to be deep enough to slide in, fit snugly against the core masonry, but stick out far enough to that when they get faced at the angle, that it will be a complete, there won't be any voids. Right. If the block was too not deep enough and you fit it in there, and then when you go to face it at the proper angle, you go up there and the facing machine only touches like one piece of the block that's sticking out far enough and the rest of it becomes a void.
That's right.
So you would want to avoid
having voids in your faces. That's right.
So I just imagine this as like, let's set the angle. Then you can set up a surveying instrument against that face and use it, in a more simplified way to measure, or to at least shoot, up there and see that these blocks are sticking out far enough. Now you'd have to do it. It would be a little more complicated than just shooting that direct line.
Yeah.
But you'd have to have something that came off of this surface a few feet.
Yep.
And then you're using that, like, even if it was, you could imagine a string line, you could pull a string.
Yeah.
And say, as long as the blocks, the shallowest part of the block is within a foot of that string, you're good.
You're good. Right. And again, you have to remember that all of this is at an angle, which makes it harder than just, making a flat surface. It seems like they're prepping this to be done to the entire set of casing stones. And for whatever reason, they didn't finish the job.
Also, this would be useful for going not only up, but to the sides.
Yes.
Like if they placed these middle blocks first, then they could shoot to the sides as well as they go down, and to reach the corners, you want to make sure the corner blocks are all sticking out far enough.
That's right.
Yeah, so it would be handy as a surveying, site preparation for a surveying instrument, I guess. I don't know.
Right. So part of the idea here, one of the things that we're looking at are these enormous construction projects that for whatever reason were left unfinished in the middle of the job. Sometimes it seems right near the end of the job and it doesn't get completed. And that is what I think these two flattened faces on Menkaure are showing us, that they intended to do this to the whole thing and they didn't finish the job. So here's a pile of granite rubble. This was all pushed away from the pyramid. This is just one picture of one of the piles. There's just stuff like this lying all over the place. And you can see these beautiful flat surfaces on these things. So presumably people were coming in here and cutting out this granite, removing this stuff, pulling these blocks off the pyramid because they wanted either flat surfaces or they just needed granite for making millstones. You can kind of see it now. We're looking at a Google Earth image, and you can kind of see around here there's just piles of this rubble all around. So what we're doing now is we walked around to the east side from the north side of the pyramid where the entrance is. We walked around to the east side of the pyramid, and there is this mortuary temple is what it's called, the mortuary or pyramid temple of Menkaure right here. And that's what we're going to look at next.
And then you see the actual causeway going off into the distance there,
yes,
too.
That's right. The causeway is there. So this is, we've walked around the pyramid. We're looking at the corner of this thing. And now this is made of highly eroded, enormous limestone blocks. There's lots of interesting features I could point out on this that sort of do some indications of possibly where sand, like this groove in this block right here may be an indication of where it was buried in sand. If it was buried in sand up to this level, then the wind-blown sand going across that surface would erode this groove into this block. We saw this all over Egypt. You can kind of see it going around the corner here. The wind-blown sand right at ground level will cut these grooves into the block. But there's other interesting marks. People may have been, again, we're looking through many thousands of years of stuff. So, like, what are these marks here? Did the builders leave those? Or is this something else? Somebody else cutting stuff out of it? It's not really clear. But you just notice the extremely heavily eroded blocks along the top of this temple, this structure. These up here, the blocks at the top, these would have presumably have been exposed. Some of this other stuff was presumably buried in sand and maybe rubble for a long time. But these up here, the ones that have been exposed for a long time, they look like sponges. They're just so degraded. I've zoomed in here so you can kind of see it. Okay, let's move forward. So this is where this structure connects to the casing stones of the pyramid itself. So my question when I was looking at this, and the question we've been asking ourselves is, because again, the standard model considers all this to be of a piece. In other words, the pyramid itself and this pyramid temple all put in place at the same time by the same construction, by the same builders for the same pharaoh, for Menkaure. And yet here we already have the question of, did they intend to face all these stones and never finish the job? Because you can see here, these casing stones for the pyramid are still puffy, pillowy. They haven't been flattened like those other areas. And then where this pyramid temple connects to those casing stones, it's butted up against those unflattened, unfaced stones. I'll zoom in a bit here so you can see it. So, and I talked to Randall about this, that if you're a builder and your intent is to build a structure all at once that has multiple rooms, like this temple, in other words, would be if it was built by the same people and it was intended to be part of the pyramid, you wouldn't do it this way. These limestone core blocks of this temple should go through the casing and all the way to the core masonry of the pyramid itself, and then that's cased, right? In other words, like if you have a house and you want to add a room to it, or if you're just building the house from the ground up and you're putting a room somewhere, you don't finish the whole house and put the siding on and then build your extra room. Or if you're adding a room, you take the siding off and you connect those walls to the interior structure of the house. Lock it in to the load-bearing walls of the structure. You don't just sort of attach it to the exterior facing. To me,
unless you're the only thing I would say is different about that is that these casing stones are load-bearing.
That's right.
These are not. This is not the same as a siding, which is definitely not load-bearing.
That's right.
But your point is valid in its other respects.
You're right.
I think.
Because they're giant blocks, they can bear lots of load.
Yeah.
But it seems like what we see with the flattened areas is the intent was to flatten the whole thing. They clearly didn't. Building this temple up against this, they were putting it up against blocks, casing stone blocks that were not flattened. And it seems to me like you would actually want to make those temple walls go through the casing and attach to the core masonry of the pyramid itself, and then build the casing around that.
Right. If they plan to encase the temple, which is made of limestone, obviously easily eroded compared to the granite,
right?
You would want to case that too. So my thought was, well, while they're casing the pyramid, they could be building this limestone structure, and then they could plan to case it later. But the problem with that is if you were planning to flatten the surface, now you've got all of that debris raining down on this other structure that's like...
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It would be a mountain of debris. So anyway, continue.
So what do you think that means? That
I'm basically saying that I'm on the side of the fence that is like, this is a later structure. This is a later addition by different builders.
That's right. That's the point that I'm trying to get at here, is that it implies to me that somebody built this pyramid and intended to flatten the face of all of the casing stones and didn't finish the job. And at a later point, somebody came and added this structure. And they clearly added it to an unfinished structure without altering that structure very much. This is another look at it, and this is an image that has a millstone. So you can see somebody was in the process of taking a granite casing stone and making a millstone out of it.
You can also see that just the way that these limestone blocks are laid, although it is awesome, it is not nearly to the degree of precision, I guess you could say.
That's right.
It just looks much different than the way the granite stones are laid.
That's right.
They seem to be much finer. Now, the limestone is more heavily eroded, but just you can just see the sort of tilting and the sort of haphazard way that they're sort of set together. It's just not quite to the same degree of skill as the granite blocks.
That's right. And again, note the piles of rubble, granite rubble here above the casing.
In other words, it's not bad. It just looks like a different builder.
That's right.
Now, there's no reason to think that with a job this big, you wouldn't have multiple different contractors. Like, they just think you have a modern job.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to hire this builder to do this part. Then you got this other builder that's doing this other part, and then maybe you have your general contractor guy who's kind of overseeing the whole thing. He's not the builder necessarily doing the work or his style.
Yeah,
so
you have AAA pyramids doing the pyramid, and you got Johnson's temples doing the temple.
So you have different styles all in the same structure, which is, that's understandable. But I still think that this is, if you were the general contractor on this job, you would make sure that at least that hallway connects to the core masonry if you're planning to case the entire thing.
That's right. Even if you weren't, you could have the granite casing stones sort of finish out against the limestone and have the limestone go all the way through, and you can maybe come around the corner and sort of...
I would say if you weren't planning to case the temple, then you should case the pyramid first and then put the temple up against it.
Yeah. Yeah, and flatten the casing stones, seemingly. I don't know.
One of my thoughts initially about the not flattening the casing stones before putting these walls up is that the casing stones being irregular, when you cut the limestone block to fit against it, it sort of locks it in place. Now, if they were flat, it would just be two flat surfaces. Now, we're talking about huge stones here, so it doesn't, but you're not screwing it into the wall or anything, right? So in a modern situation with flimsy pieces of wood, you would want to screw it into the wall. If you couldn't, you'd want it to lock into that wall somehow.
That's right.
So this is one way of like locking those tall walls into place so that they don't want to shift, lean in or out because they're up against this irregular surface.
Right.
So that was
there's all kinds of questions about this. This is what's so fascinating about looking at these pictures, like what actually was going on here.
Yeah, and then once the surface was faced, it would appear as though the granite casing stones sort of went around corners into the limestone, and the limestone vice versa. If the limestone was going deep into a recess between the granite pillowiness.
Yes.
It's hard to explain, but yeah, they would look like they were alternately going around corners.
So this is a view of the pyramid, the east face of the pyramid from inside the temple, one of the areas inside the temple. And again, you can see these.
It's just,
you can see these. I don't know, these deep cuts, almost like
giant trenches, horizontal trenches cut in the side of the walls.
Yeah, looks like what we see here would be water erosion, but this is probably sand. This is another view from inside. just looking around inside here. And you can see these blocks are freaking huge.
Yeah.
There's a view looking out towards the other two pyramids, Khafre and Khufu. But what was interesting were these blocks on the inside of this temple. So we're talking, again, we're thinking about multiple stages of building, possibly a large amount of time passing between each stage. And there are these casing stones on the interior of this temple. There's not very many of them left, but there were some, and I tried to get as many pictures of them as I could. And this, again, is a completely different style. You see that they've cleanly faced the front faces of the blocks, but left the corners puffy. Now, this is interesting because those corners, if it was faced completely, those sharp corners that would result from completely facing it all the way out to the edges would be the most vulnerable parts of the block. They would be vulnerable to breakage as you're moving them around, putting them in place or whatever. So leaving them like this, where the corners aren't, sharp, protects that if you do intend later to come along and face it and make it all perfectly smooth. It's not clear that they did intend to do that. But this block in the middle, it does seem like they may have faced it all the way flat. I'm not sure, because this one sticks out. You see this?
Mm-hmm.
This one might be completely faced. I don't know.
You can kind of see a small line down
There
at
is
the
a little
bottom.
bit of a line here at the bottom, yeah. But what's interesting is how these blocks are connecting to the limestone core of the temple itself. So we'll look at that here. This is another shot of the faces of the block. So you can see it's flat in the middle of the block, but the edges have been left rough. And that gives you a scale. These blocks are not small. So yeah, these look like chisel marks to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm wondering what was happening here.
And they go from the block above through to the block below. So
That's right.
It looks like...
And then look here. They've cut in to this block to place these.
Yeah, it may have been...
And over here, they cut in to this block to place this one.
But you can see in some of the erosion where it hasn't really cut a channel, but it's pockmarked. It's made the stone like Swiss cheese, basically, like you were saying. So maybe they're cutting out some of that weaker material.
They're removing the weaker material. So in other words, what we're looking at here possibly is a third stage of building. In other words, that this core masonry of this temple had to have some time to become eroded before somebody else later came in and was trying to protect this structure by installing these granite or diorite, whatever they are. They look like diorite to me. They look kind of like the same material that the Serapeum boxes are made of. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure what this material is. But it is a kind of black granite with crystal inclusions. So that's the question. Are we looking at 3 stages of building here with 2 intermediary periods of undeterminate age or length? How long does it take? How long does it take for this temple to become eroded enough to where we see this kind of installation where it looks like they were, like they've done elsewhere on Giza, matching new casing to old erosion, like they did in the Valley Temple and in the Sphinx Temple. So that's one of the questions, again, is like we see over and over that it seems like somebody was doing a giant building project, didn't quite finish the job. A lot of time passes and somebody else comes along and does another giant building project, and maybe they don't finish the job. And then somebody else comes along way later after that's all eroded, and then starts to try to protect it with new casing stones. So how much time are we talking about passing here? This is a question I don't have the answer for, but it's a good one to ask. So now we're moving over to, we're looking at Khufu. This is the Great Pyramid. This is the east side, I think. This is the basalt paving out in front of this ridiculously enormous structure. And it's beautifully flat. And this is another one where it looks like somebody was installing these tiles, these basalt tiles, onto an already eroded surface of the plateau itself. So here's a look down into a pit where you can kind of see the edges of the tiles. And they're rough. Now, it's not really clear what we're looking at here. Some of this may be modern attempts at repairs. Some of this may be mortar. I don't know. But this is the area where there's lots of saw marks and saw cuts, and they're always evident on the edges of these tiles. But my question is how much repair work was done in modern times for this? Did these tiles always have these irregular subsurfaces, the bottoms of the tiles? Were they always irregular like this, or is that just breakage after? Was it completely disturbed and the bottoms of the tiles were exposed and they've been chipped off and broken? And then when they tried to repair the tiling in the surface, they've put in a bunch of mortar to fill in all those holes? Or is that how they were cut?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
Now, there are other places where
here's a saw mark.
They're clearly complete. They're sitting on the right on the bedrock. So I don't know.
But look at this. This looks like an intentional cut. I know, but this corner. Yeah. Well, I agree that it's matched to some mortar here, but this corner looks intentional on the basalt. It kind of goes nicely around a 90-degree here.
Yeah, or it was just the result of some other block that was taken.
Yes, that's right.
From a larger piece. And they're just like, well, we're only needing this for a tile.
Right. And again, these are installed in some cases on possibly older limestone tiles below them. And these are also in many cases heterogeneous. They have there's one going around a 90-degree, in other words, not matching. A little
step.
Yeah, a little step, not matching the horizontal course of the one next to it. So that's the question. Is this a broken tile and they've filled it in with mortar, or is this how it was originally made? Don't know, but look how perfect the upper surface is. It's just so beautiful. And then we have this video. Kyle took this. So what is this?
This is just a piece of the basalt tiling it's now like an island because everything else around it had been busted up or whatever.
Cutting this out. They were making these trenches for lighting, wiring.
Yeah, yes, they did that, but also, I mean, this thing has been destroyed at the edges, right? It's just gone at the edges, and even the basalt chunks are gone, and so this is like this little island that's left, and I was just amazed at these 2 or 3 blocks up here, and I at one point was measuring their level with this little precision level that I had. But this video was just comparing it to the rest of the tiling. It's cool.
So let's take a look here.
So yeah, here you can see how well it matches with the rest of the surface out there.
Oh yeah, look at that. Bam.
And it's just on this heavily eroded piece of bedrock that's sticking up.
Yeah, that's
or is
amazing.
That, is that old limestone
tile?
I don't know.
Right, but it's clear again.
But it was just so well made. So the point is like after however many thousands of years, these 2 tiles are still sitting relatively level and at the same height as all of the other tiles that they have been completely separated from at this point.
It's just amazing.
It's just well done.
Yeah. Okay, just a quick look here at the Valley Temple. This is another case of a structure that seems to have been built out of gigantic, enormous limestone core blocks. And then after some amount of time had passed where those core blocks eroded due to the elements, somebody came in and cased it in granite. And this structure is absolutely beautiful. And again,
which is interesting because the interior of this temple is granite. Like the granite columns, it had a granite roof.
That's right.
So, but the exterior walls were these just gigantic limestone.
Yeah, and I think Ben said that the outside was also cased. It's just all gone. Almost all of it's gone. Yeah.
Right. So the point is why did they, this is a separate point, but why did they choose these different stones if it was the same builder?
Yeah.
Or did they find this heavily eroded just exterior wall and decided to case it and then build like columns and stuff out of granite on the inside?
Yeah. Yeah, or maybe there were there were remnants of limestone columns and stuff in the interior, and they tried to copy it. They just removed, who knows? But that's a great question. Yeah, but again, this is one of the temples where there's just no writing. It's just the walls are silent. They speak in a different way, and these blocks go around corners. So now we're looking at an image where you're looking into a kind of hallway. And you can see how these blocks go around the corners, this one especially. And its matching block on the other side definitely goes around the corner in a big way. But all of them kind of do a little bit.
Yeah, at least a couple of inches.
Yes. So if this was done in the same style, and I generally think it was, that these blocks, if you think back to what we were looking at the Menkaure pyramid and the casing stones there, that this block would have been puffy. In other words, it would have it would have had a lot of material here.
I'm not sure that those are the same block. I think those are two different blocks, but they do go around the corner.
Oh, you think this one is a different block? You're right.
This one goes around the corner on the back wall. It goes around the corner towards us a little bit.
Yeah, you're right. There's a line there.
So the point is if they were puffy, up to like 2 to 3 inches or something.
Yeah, there's the line right there.
They were faced off 2 to 3 inches. You would see that's how they appear to go around the corner there.
Okay, next.
I mean, they do.
They definitely go around the corner. Look at this monster. This block right here. It's absolutely enormous. And then this one on this side. There's some of these blocks are just unbelievably huge. And yeah, there's this, what looks like in these corners, what would you call that? Like a drill line?
Yeah. From the top to the bottom of the corner.
From all the way at the top of the wall to the floor.
It has horizontal striations that look like it might have been like a tube drill.
Yes, they drilled this out. It's continuous. It's hard to see in the images, but it is continuous. When you're there, you can walk up to the corner and look up and see that there's this continuous.
Like, see, that block is coming around the corner from the left to the right, and then the block above it. It's like they alternate.
Yeah.
Well, that one goes way around the corner.
It does go way around the corner. So it's where the question here is: did they do this by installing blocks that had a lot more material on them, and then you drill 4 holes at the tops of the walls, and then you begin to face the entire thing down to where those holes become the corners of your hallway?
Right.
That's what it looks like. Whether that's the way they did it or not, I don't know. But it is an interesting idea, and that's how you end up with blocks going around corners, like Kyle was pointing out. So this is I just wanted to point out real quick here how fine these joints are. This is a 3-way joint, one going, it's horizontal, and then there's a vertical joint right there where my middle finger is. I put my hand on here for scale. So this is a joint between, for between the courses, and then this is a joint between 2 blocks on the upper course. It's so thin, it's almost invisible. And again, we're talking about absolutely gigantic blocks here. And then the other thing to note here is how heavily eroded the granite is. This is decomposing. So you note also the nature of the granite. It's rough grain. The grain sizes in this granite are large. They're the size of my fingernails. So the individual pieces of quartz and feldspar and all the different stuff that granite's made of are large. And in some cases, those pieces are just kind of crumbling off because the granite itself has been exposed for so long that it's decomposing. Here's another. This one goes around the corner.
Outside corner, yes.
Yeah, this is an outside corner. And you see how fine the joint is between the 2 blocks. So much so that it almost disappears.
Yeah, it's almost as though the only reason you can see it today is because it's a weak point.
Right.
And so it's more eroded at the corners or edges of these blocks of each course than it is on the normal surface of the block. If that wasn't the case, you may not even be able to see these seams at all.
Right. That's right. They would almost vanish. Yeah. So this is just one image we got of where the, and this may be on the outside. I can't remember, but this is a granite stone faced up against the limestone core, and you can see that they made it fit. And this is more obvious in other places. This is the only place I could get a good photo. But this is where they were making it fit the already eroded limestone itself. So again, this implies 2 stages of building, possibly. We need to take a break?
Yep.
Break time. All right. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, Brothers of the Serpent podcast, second half of the show. Trying to make our way through this Egypt presentation, unfinished. And it may be unfinished by the end of this episode. We'll see. But we are moving now from the Giza Plateau and the Pyramid of Menkaure down to the Osireion. This is about 300 miles down south, up the Nile, southward. So I'm just showing a map here, give you the idea of how far it is, about 300 miles away. So this is the Osireion, Google Earth images. You can see the Temple of Seti I there.
Little L shape.
Little L shape, yeah. So just pointing out that most of the time these kinds of temples are long rectangles, but the Temple of Seti does this nice little L-shaped bend. It takes a hard left.
All right, I have a question about this. What is with the orientation there? I'm assuming the Google Earth image is north-south.
It's close to north-south.
Yeah, there's north. Okay. So,
yeah.
That's interesting.
Yes.
I would like to look at other temples that are supposed to be like this. Do they have random orientations, or are they typically... Because I thought... in a lot of cases, an equinox or a solstice sunrise or something would shine through the opening of the temple.
Yeah. Not in this
But
case.
This temple, its original part, seems to be oriented in the same direction as the Osireion.
It does. I noticed this as well when I was looking through here.
So tell us a story. What's the standard model story about this? Or what?
The standard model story is that the Osireion and the temple itself are all one thing.
Okay.
That the Osireion is something like the tomb of Osiris.
Mm-hmm.
But the Osireion is 40 to 50 feet below surface level. The temple is on the surface. The Osireion is way below it. And because of the way the temple sort of takes this turn, it seems like the engineers were digging the foundations for the temple and ran into the Osireion and put the rest of the temple off to the side in order to not cover it. Mm-hmm. But you're correct that the orientations are roughly similar.
So my thought was that maybe they were digging the foundations and they ran in to the Osireion.
And then they matched
its orientation.
Yeah, exactly. And it also seems like maybe Seti himself had an indication that there was something there, possibly. Mm. It isn't clear, really, but the question too is why did he intend to install his temple here?
I'd like to measure the angle there, but anyway, we'll do that later.
I mean, it's almost 45 degrees.
Yeah, it does look like that, but it would be interesting if it was.
Yeah.
Well, just like to know.
So this is looking down into the Osireion from above. And again, you can see how deep it is beneath the surface. Lots and lots of layers of Nile silt here from old floods. What's unclear is, Did the builders of the Osireion dig this pit in order to put the temple down below ground level, or was it put on the surface and then buried by later silt? That's a question I have. I don't know.
Seems like if they had dug it out, the archaeologists would have found that. Like, in other words, when they're excavating, they would have been excavating loose rubble, not finely made sedimentary lines. Also, it would have been filled with sediment.
Yeah. But SETI dug it out.
Ah.
That's the thing. Again, we're looking through thousands of years of cultural stuff.
Oh.
Erosion and deposition by people who have been living in this place. So SETI's
So
engineers...
possibly that back wall there in the picture was how far SETI went?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
In other words, they're digging foundations for the temple and they run into the tops of these blocks.
Yes.
They hit the roof.
Yeah.
And then they dug it out. And it goes down multiple levels below this.
Right.
But it's covered in water. Yes, it's into the water table.
Now, is the water table there because of the dam?
Yes, this used to go up and down.
Because of the Nile flooding.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Another look from more straight on. So you can see the megalithic style here. And again, we're way above the temple, the structure itself at this point. And it's hard to convey in images how gigantic some of these blocks are and what it feels like when you're standing in this thing. We're walking in.
That's that doorway that you were just looking at.
Yeah.
It's in the previous picture. Yeah, the doorway in the back there with the two boards going across the water.
Right.
It's enormous.
Yes. So we're walking in, and you can see that these blocks have been quarried by later people. Again, here's some quarry marks here. We'll notice these later when we're looking at the Aswan quarry. This is a particular kind of granite quarrying where you use iron or steel chisels and you make a bunch of, like a dotted line into the stone with the chisels. And then you pound in wooden.
This is what they say.
This is what they say. You pound wooden wedges into these, or possibly just metal ones. But you put, the story here is that wooden wedges are put in, and they pour water. They wait for the wood to expand. They pound on them more with hammers and pour water on them, and eventually it'll split the block. And if you've done it right, or if the granite is the right composition, you get a somewhat flat but rough face after you split it. And they're trying to steal these very finely flattened surfaces off of these blocks. So again, the Osireion,
I think the proper term is reuse.
right? Recycle. Yes. They're quarrying the place. Here's some quarrying marks, and this one didn't work out for the people doing the quarrying. So they were trying to get themselves a little corner here, and it looks to me like it didn't work properly. It broke unevenly. But maybe all they wanted was this upper flat face. I don't know. Not sure exactly what happened here, because it seems like I don't know how this quarrying technique works, but it seems like you would maybe need more here, or you would want to go all the way down.
Yeah, I was thinking in a lot of cases here that most of this stuff was buried in sand, and they just didn't know how deep it was. So they're like, well, maybe we can quarry this piece off because the block maybe doesn't go down very far.
Right. So they stop here.
But they don't realize that they've only made marks in less than half the length of the block.
Right. That's right.
It's much less likely to split off perfectly if you don't go all the way across that surface you're trying to
That's
break.
right. And then if you look at this, down here at the bottom of this block, you can see water lines from when the water used to go up and down. I think that's what this is, because you kind of see them all over the place.
And if you go back, zoom in a little bit on the tiles on the floor, to the right and to the left corner there, you can see that the floor tiles are depressed slightly around where the column fits in.
Right. They put the columns in sockets.
This depression is like a roughing out, because you can see it in one of the empty holes.
Right.
You see this same depression around the empty hole, and so we were thinking like there's
Here's another one.
It's supposed to be a column in that hole.
Yes, you can see this one also is roughed out. It's in its own socket. And what's interesting is that there's a little bit of space here. We'll see this, and then it goes very deep. Like they would actually make this into a plug. So this block is mostly intact, and yet it still has these interesting marks on it in various places that may be tool marks, possibly. We'll look at more of this as we move forward here.
Oh, man. Forgot to start that again.
These blocks are relatively well kept. Now, somebody clearly quarried some corners off the tops of this block and up here. And these, again, I want to point out, these wouldn't have been the roof. The roof would have been on top of these. So this may be a remnant of a roof block here. And the roof blocks are just really gigantic. It's crazy being underneath these because, you know, you've got this giant column next to you and it's just one single piece. And you just wonder, when you're walking through here, you just wonder about the builder who's just like, yeah, no, I want the column to be a single block.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, just one. You know, we would do this now, and the dynastic Egyptians definitely did this. They would make these beautiful, really tall columns by using column drums, so little discs, and you stack the discs, these rounded discs on top of each other all the way up, and then you carve the whole thing out to make this beautiful column. Whoever built this, they're just like, nope, one block. You know, they wanted to build this thing, it seems like, in as few blocks as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you can see water lines.
Mm-hmm.
And that these blocks are in their own sockets here. Here's around the side. You can see it. So here we go. Single column block. Enormous roof supporting blocks going across the tops of the columns. Just one per span. Well, of course, you have to do it that way. And then the roof blocks
could have been
across.
narrower.
Yeah, they could have been narrower.
Narrower beams that were just, you stack the beams next to each other. But no,
right.
It's one giant thick block.
Also, nothing here is completely square. So there's a slight taper to everything, or a slight tilt to the outer walls and a slight taper to the columns. It's just so unbelievably amazing and fascinating to look at this and realize. And when you're standing in it, there's this effect.
Yeah, so the ceiling would be bigger than the floor space.
That's
because
right.
They're all tapered.
Yeah, just to make it harder.
I wonder, too, about that in terms of the perspective. Like, if you saw this thing when it was complete.
Yeah.
Because everything's tapering away as it gets further away from you.
Yeah.
That it actually appears more square.
Yeah.
Because
it seems like it needs to get wider as it goes up.
It does get wider as it goes up.
Oh.
Because the columns in themselves taper narrower and the walls taper away. So that the ceiling space
I see.
looks to be the same size as the floor. Because it's bigger.
Okay, yeah.
Than the floor space.
You're right. Okay, so the negative space is what looks the same size, not the blocks themselves. Right. Yeah, okay. I got it. I get it.
It's weird the way they did that. It's just cool. I mean, there's no need to do it, but they did it. It's like, well, what would be the purpose of that?
Yeah.
You know?
So here's one of the sockets. You can see the line around this.
The sort of roughing out area.
Roughing out. So it looks like there may have been a column plugged into this hole.
Yes.
There are some roof blocks. These are some of the few that remain. And again, it's very difficult to convey the scale. But standing beneath these roof blocks, there's just a sense of the immensity of these stones when you're standing beneath them and looking up. You know, they're so far above you and they're so massive. I don't know. It's just really impressive, amazing to walk through here. And this band of this strange mottled band going across the top here is reflection from the water, because the center of this walkway that I'm standing in is full of water. So this is the reflection from the water onto the roof blocks there. That's what it looks like.
See, now this is really interesting. If this was a place where you're supposed to be, you know, not like you were saying in the beginning, the pyramids don't look like you're supposed to be in them when you're in them, and the temples do. Now, how does this make sense for a temple? Or were there tiles of a different type of stone
in this
trough?
In this trough, yeah.
If not, then you just have this like large step down into a trench
right.
that runs down like what should be a main hallway, and there's all these little alcoves on the sides that you would have to climb up just to walk into, and then they're tiny little rooms that don't go anywhere. It's just
it is weird.
This place does not I don't think this place is designed for like people to be in it.
Right. It doesn't make sense. You're jumping over things, and
sort of goes against my argument of the perspective of the tapering, but
who knows?
It's very strange.
So just to give a comparison, again, this is I don't remember which temple this is. I just picked a few of these, but look at how the columns are discs. They're made of column drums. They're beautiful, but every surface is covered in writing. And they're open and airy and just, I don't know, they're designed. It seems like when you're walking around in these, it's like, yes, people are meant to be in here. But then you see this, and it's just completely different. Look at that compared to these and how much writing there is.
Yeah, now there are some one single piece columns that look like these that are made of granite.
Yes.
We saw them at Tanis.
That's right. And guess what?
There's no writing on them.
No writing
but
on
they
them.
do have the palm fronds.
That's right.
Into
They
the
do.
tops.
Yes. So again, we may be looking at advanced cargo cult.
Right.
The temples are beautiful, but again, they're covered in
same
imagery.
building, same basic construction method, columns with the cross members and then the roofing tiles over top of that.
Yeah. So back to the Osireion. This is just showing some, you might be starting to recognize this style. This is one of the exterior walls of the Osireion, and you see how it's unflattened. Unlike the columns we were just looking at, which were flat, have flat surfaces, you see a couple of sheared off, what look like sheared off nubs on this, scoop marks, vertical lines.
This is the
tool
inside.
marks, possibly. Yes, this is on the inside.
Inside of an exterior wall.
Here's what are you calling this? A notch?
Yeah.
This is inset. And again, the blocks are not flat, not flattened.
Now that one looked like sandstone almost.
It does.
And some of these are. So the tile at the ceiling there on the right is sandstone or some kind of limestone.
Right. Here's a block that goes around a corner from vertically.
Ceiling, yeah.
So it's like you install this and then you make it match this block and it goes around a corner. So this was interesting. In the Osireion, we kept seeing these. And this is something you see in other megalithic and heterogeneous or cyclopean stone masonry elsewhere in the world, where there are these little tiny inclusions, like where you see these giant megalithic blocks, and then there are these little bitty things installed, at junctions or at joints. This shows you that kind of this doesn't go all the way through the wall. In other words, this is maybe purely for aesthetics. It's to repair a broken part of the corner of the block, so that when they faced this, it would be complete. Like Kyle was saying earlier, there would be no void left. So in other words, if you're moving your block from the quarry and you've left it, unfinished on all the faces, so that you don't damage it, or when you do damage it by accident, because it's going to happen, that you don't lose the material that you need for the finished surface. And yet sometimes it's still going to happen that you break the corner off by some accident, but you can repair it by sort of scooping that out and installing one of these little insets, so that when you face the whole thing, you have this clean corner. There's no void left. Here's an example where they've done that. They installed this little thing possibly to fix where this block was chipped on its upper edge. And then when they finished it out, it's got a nice clean, it doesn't have a big void there.
Now, what's interesting about this in terms of the facing is that looks faced, but it's puffy.
Yes. That's right.
It's like they stuck that piece in there, and then they just took the tool and just kind of.
That's right. It does. Yes.
But it's still the
this is
whole
in one of
block
the
is still
alcoves.
pillowy.
Yeah. This is one of the alcoves. So it's, possibly they intended to come in and do more facing or not. It could be
You can tell
complete.
that they have done some rough facing on the doorways, because this is the right side of a doorway.
Right.
You can see there that the two blocks have both been cut away to kind of widen the opening there of the door, and you'll see more of that in a minute. Yeah, see how all those doors have that little cut in?
That's right.
So they were coming through and roughly facing some stuff. And I think, too, about the nubs, that they may have stuck out like a foot, or more, and then they just come by and just roughly sort of get rid of them as they go up the courses.
Yeah. So as you look along this wall, you'll just see all these interesting marks, lots of vertical and similar looking marks all along here. You can see them hinted at in all of these blocks. There's a definite curve along this one, and it's got all these vertical, these may be witness marks, and in the nubs themselves. So somebody was coming along and roughly facing these blocks, and somebody, and then you cut the nub off, because now this is useless for maneuvering or anything else. So it seems to me like it used to extend out much farther. There's two on this block. This may be a reverse one. I don't know. But you can kind of see all these vertical lines, these vertical scoops along these blocks. Like this wall was roughly faced, but they intended to flatten it completely, and we'll see that in a minute. And here's another little inset right here, and one here. And I love how these doorways go into the block above them, which makes that block basically go around the corner of the doorway vertically. Okay. So this is what makes us think that they, again, intended to really flatten this wall. And they clearly did not finish the job. So you see here that from the ceiling blocks, the roof blocks, they were coming along and flattening. And you can kind of see the width of the tool. That they had some tool and they were working their way down from the top, just like you would with like painting a wall, like think of a paint roller. It has this same look. And when you're doing finish work, you start from the top and work your way down, and that's exactly what they were doing here. So you can imagine if somebody was painting the wall with a roller, and they were going along and painting from the top down, but they're standing on a ladder or something. They can't get all the way to the floor with the roller, so they just go where they can reach, wherever the tool can reach. That's what this looks like. It's the same pattern. And when you look along the edge, it goes all the way to the corner here. That they were flattening those rough faces, just like at Menkaure.
And the beauty of this, again, is that in that corner, you can see that because of the flattening, they're taking off 2-3 inches of stone. You can see that top block there goes around the corner.
It goes around the
and
corner.
so it wouldn't have looked to go around the corner when it was puffy.
Right.
When all that material was still sticking out, it would just be a normal corner joint.
Right. But this, again, this implies that they didn't finish the job. This one is, to me, absolutely clear that they intended to fully flatten this entire wall. And for some reason, one day, whoever was doing this job, one day he puts down his tools to go home for the night, and he just doesn't ever come back, and the job never gets finished. It still looks like this thousands and thousands of years later. And you can see that the ceiling was flattened, and this wall was beginning to be flattened. I just can't point this out enough. And so I'm going to show a video here that shows this whole wall. Hopefully this will play properly. Yeah, here it is. This is just me scanning along the wall. There's the area they flattened with those interesting marks at the bottom. And showing you the scale. So that's the question. Why didn't they finish the job? What happened? All right. Moving now from the Osireion 200 miles further up the Nile, down south to the quarry. Here it is. And you can see this is a nice source of this granite. All of this is a big granite outcrop here. And the farther down south you go or up the Nile, the more of this granite you see. It begins to stick out of the limestone. And then when you're down here at Aswan, it's just everywhere. The river's full of these huge granite outcrops sticking out in the middle of the river. But this place they chose to quarry it, and again, when you're thinking about this, you're thinking about quarrying. You got to get to the good rocks. You have to dig out all of the stuff that's been exposed to the elements to get to the stuff that is, good stone, good high quality stone.
Right. Look at the unfinished obelisk there in
yes.
the picture.
Yeah, we are going to be looking at this thing.
Yeah, I know. It's just, that's cool. That thing is so huge. So this outcrop is massive. And I would point out that they say before the Aswan Dam that this area would flood, right? And so the Nile, when it was flooded, the water would come into that channel.
Yeah.
That you can see there in the quarry.
Yeah.
Where the marker is.
That's right.
So the idea was that in that time of year, they would be able to remove some of the quarried stones and just set them right onto, river barges or whatever they use to get them downstream.
Right. You could float them right into the Nile from here.
Yeah.
So this is us looking at this. We're in the channel before we walk up to the quarry, and you can see all the, levels, all these various surfaces. Clearly, this is a quarry.
Should have cleaned your lens there, man.
Yeah, I know. I was hobbling around at this point. So I'm just going to show this area. This area is showing you what would be considered more modern, possibly, say, during the Greek period, Hellenistic. This is when they had bronze or even iron tools, maybe even steel. So they're using this method of
notching and
using chisels to make notches.
And this is a method that's basically used today. I mean, by modern masons, except they might have power tools to drill holes,
right,
in a line, and then stick steel, chisels,
wedges
in there, and then just slowly hammer each one and go back along the line and keep hammering, and then it splits the rock.
And so you get this rough split face. Now I don't know if they really split this whole thing all at once to get this long, but this could have been, somebody was making an obelisk or something.
Yeah.
Or they may have cut it up into smaller blocks, but you can see they got a very nice split here. I mean, the surface is not smooth, but that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And all along here, you see these marks. Here's some more of them. So we did see these in the quarry. There's chisel marks. I think this is definitely chiseling.
Yeah.
But then there's these. These things that you see all through the quarry. These are like almost a grid line of these strange scoops. They don't look anything like the, notching with chisels.
It's all smooth.
Yeah,
curves.
These are all smooth and roughly grid-ish. The squares are all roughly in the same position to make kind of a grid. Here's another look at some of them. And these also look much older. I don't know. I'm not sure. My impression is that this area of the quarry was a different style of cutting. There's also these very large scoopish marks where you can see that there's a tilt, and it scoops and then it goes up, or it's like almost digging down. And in some cases, these would be stair steps. So I'm kind of looking down. This is going down a slope.
It is like a stair step.
Yeah.
Right there.
Here, I'm looking back up it. And you can see Kyle trying to take the picture that I just took. So yeah, you can see how the tool here looks very large. Like whatever the tool face was, it seems to have been big. Unlike those little notches that you see with the chisels, these witness marks, what it is. This could be almost 2 feet across. Don't know. Didn't measure them. Here's more of the stair stepping. scoop marks all over the area here. Now this is interesting, scooping out, and there's this natural fracture or a change in the stone here. But you see the scoops along the bottom, like they were, like, you know, they're digging out this fractured area. This is not good granite right here.
Yeah, that could be also that they were digging to take the piece that's gone.
Yes.
On
Could
the
be.
left side.
Yeah. The other thing you notice about these scoop marks is that they're continuous in a lot of ways, a lot of times. Like this starts here, or you know, we can see it starting here, and it goes up the wall and goes all the way up, and all of them do this. You can follow the lines. It's kind of difficult to see in this image, but these are all continuous troughs, I guess you would say. And they come down and go around this. I'm looking at the same fractured area here. You can't quite see it in this side. The light isn't correct, but over here you can see that they're continuous. Here's both kinds. There's what looks more. I don't know if this is the chisel. This might be actually divots. Let's see. Scoop marks here. Tough to tell.
Yeah, it doesn't look like the smooth scoops.
Yeah. There you go. What's great about this one is you see there's an appearance of a changing of angle of the nature of the scoops, like the tool itself is on some kind of, that it has a radius. And this is, you know, we've gone back and forth with each other, Kyle and I have, and Ben, endlessly on what would the tool look like. You know, is it rotating on a radius? Does it have an articulating arm? Does it tilt? You know, but this, you may be able to determine from this kind of set of marks a center point somewhere where the tool was sitting. But you have to know how many. I think this thing is like fully articulating at multiple joints. That's right.
So you would have a fully articulating tool tip, so it can rotate and swing in all different directions. And then when you move up the boom arm, that also rotates and swings in all different directions.
Yeah.
You know, it looks like in some cases that it must have to be able to do that.
Yeah. That's right.
That was a good contrast too between the more modern chiseling method. I mean, look at those notches right there.
The notches versus this.
Yeah. It's a big contrast.
Yeah, that is a big contrast. Then there are these. These are all over the quarry. Test pits.
Or anchor points.
Anchor points, test pits of mostly indeterminate depth. They are usually full of sand and rubble and trash at the bottom. Ben says some of these go down 30 feet. So you can imagine if they are test pits, that's the idea, that they were digging down around an area where they wanted to extract stone, and they were digging down to see, like, what's the quality? You know, you dig down and see, like, are there any major fractures in the area? You know, is the quality of the stone good enough? But again, you see that this being made with primitive tools? You can kind of see the scoop nature of this. It just doesn't seem like a test pit made with very primitive tools, or like even the pounding stones would look like this.
The scooping is like in a horizontal manner.
It's
here.
Horizontal.
Like you stick the tool down and it scoops around.
Right.
And then you get that out of there. Then it goes down and scoops around again and does it on one side and then the other, and it leaves that rib in the middle.
Right.
It's just,
It's very, very interesting.
And then some of them don't have that rib. It's just like a single hole.
Right.
It's like they dug a second one.
Like
there.
that one. I don't know why I didn't get up to take a picture down in there, but this is another pit, and you can see there's scoops all around it. But then it goes up and there's this deep hole right here. So now we are going to look at this thing. This is a closer image of it on Google Earth, but yeah, we're going to actually focus on this absolutely enormous thing that's still stuck in the quarry. Again, the idea of unfinished. It is called the Unfinished Obelisk. Here it is. So again, pictures don't do it justice. I don't have the right words. It's massive. So
It's too big.
It's too big to talk about. For scale, look at our Men in Black up here. See this guy? This is one of the Men in Black. One of the guards we had with us. So yeah, this is that one. This might be Yusuf.
Yep.
Probably telling us to stop climbing down into the This thing, it's just unbelievably gigantic. And and it's also tilted, it's on this angle. It isn't flat. So you start to wonder, like, what were they thinking? How are they going to get it out of this pit? What was their plan to move it out of here? This part of the quarry wouldn't have been full of water. So if you're thinking in terms of, primitive methods, or at least, let's say, the methods that they say the dynastic Egyptians had, how are they going to get it out of this pit? This thing is huge, and they estimate it would have been 1,200 tons. But again, it isn't dug all the way out. That they hadn't even, when you look down into the pits on either side of this thing, they hadn't even started to dig under it. So it would have been deeper. In other words, if it's larger, it would have been larger than it is now. So I guess somebody's done some estimates on what its final, cubic feet or cubic meters of stone would have been, and then how much.
Yeah, you would imagine it's square, at the base, and so you can kind of figure it out because you have the width there. So if it was a square all the way around, you could figure out what the end shape would be, and then
But I wonder if 1,200 tons is like that's what it would have been when it was finished, or if that's what it would have weighed when they cut this thing out of there.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine that thing. I mean, how do they know what the finished? I'm thinking that this thing is much bigger
than what its finished
final finished product is going to be, because because it's so big, you've got to leave even more stone on the exterior, because any kind of bump.
Yeah, and you're going to lose a giant chunk.
You bump that corner against the granite bedrock,
you
may lose a giant piece.
Yeah.
So you've got to leave, I would imagine they might leave a foot of material.
All the way around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a much, much smaller piece. But that's the thing that really stuck with me about being able to look at these different sites and see the unfinished nature of so many of them and realize, okay, these are the sort of methods that you would expect from the quarry.
Yeah.
Then when you look at this, now you reason, well, they left a lot of this obelisk is puffy.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yes.
And then somebody's going to take the planing tool or whatever it is and plane this thing down once it gets to the site.
Yeah.
And
you
maybe
can tell
even,
that it's not surfaced. You can see the grid mark of scoops here. Somebody dug too deep right there, or maybe they were scooping out some bad material. There's a couple of places on here where you can see that there's been removal, unlike the rest of it.
Checking some cracks, like there might have been some cracks there that they were like, okay, let's go and see if we can get to how deep do these cracks go? And it's like, okay, we made it all the way through. Let's keep cutting.
Yeah. Yeah.
You never know.
And again, you see scoops all around this, and these scoops are, more haphazard and they're deeper cut, whereas on this thing, they're finer. And there's actually, you can't see it here, but there's actually basically a grid of these kinds of scoops over the entire thing. And in many cases, you can follow the grid across the thing, down the side of it, across the bottom of the trench, up the side of the trench, and then along these. It's a very regular pattern. Here's another view of it. Just taking pictures from all around it, trying to show how absolutely enormous it is, looking down on and you can see that. I mean, even if it is puffy, they got themselves a nice square.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'm saying puffy because.
Yeah. In other words, they're going to remove material.
They're going to remove.
This. We're not looking at the finished surface here, but it's.
We're not looking at pillowy.
It's got clean. Yeah, it's got clean lines for something that. Yeah. Here again, you can see they've scooped deeper here and here. And yes, it's beveled.
Mm-hmm. Which makes sense.
Makes
if you're wanting
sense.
To protect
you don't want
those.
that sharp. Yeah, exactly.
Right. That sharp corner can if you get it bumped, it's likely to take off a lot more.
Yeah.
Than if you bevel it. There's no there's not as much of a what they call in like when you're napping, they call it a platform.
Yeah.
So that beveling right there basically removes the platform because you need at least a 90-degree angle to hit it here and to take off that bit of material. So if you bevel it, it makes it extremely hard to take a chunk out.
Right.
That's, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
That goes deeper than where you hit the stone.
Yeah, that's right. And here's a look at the top. So even though, I mean, this is why they call it an obelisk. They were clearly tapering the top edge of it here.
And I think the whole length of it is tapered as well.
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely tapered, but the top of it looks obelisk-y.
Yeah. Yes. It's obelisk-esque.
Yes, obelisk-esque. Or as Matheson wanted me to say, Ophiuchesque or Ophiuchus-esque.
All right, we can take a break now. We're kind of going way over.
Okay, let's take it.
All right. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Possibly the final segment, not sure. Russ wants to finish his presentation. And yeah, man, it's great. Great so far. This was also delivered live in front of a live audience at a couple of the Contact of the Cabin events, one with Randall and the Randwolf tour.
Yep.
So yeah, you're honing your skills here. And I'm the heckler.
Yes.
Keep throwing in 2 cents. But yeah, let's keep going.
Yeah. So we're still looking at here's another, this is one of my favorite pictures of this thing. I don't know. Let's just all sit here and be quiet and think about how gigantic this thing is.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about it. You can see at the bottom there where it's like they're going down the side, but then you have the square grid pattern at the base.
Yeah, that's right.
Down in the trench.
Yeah, it's the grid pattern is real clear here on this, and it does. These lines continue and go down the wall and across the bottom and up the side of the obelisk and across the top.
Well, but on the base, it looks like they're using the same method there. There's 2 different methods apparently. Yeah. There's like an actual somehow a scooping. This looks like a plunging tool.
Yes, okay.
It's plunging down and stopping and just coming back up and then plunging down and stopping and coming back up. Yeah. But it's square. It's not a tube drill.
Right.
It's not circular marks.
I'll zoom in on that.
And then on the sides, you can see the plunging marks along the quarry side, not the work itself, just going down the wall of that trench.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I didn't get a really good look down in the bottoms of those trenches. It's very hard to see because the contrast, the camera actually can see further down into the trench than you can with the naked eye.
That's right.
Because it's so bright where the sun is shining on the surface of the quarry, and then there's that shadow in the trench. And when you look down there, it's just black.
Right.
You have to get close to it or get into the shadow yourself so that you're not blinded by the bright reflections. But see, when you take a picture with the camera,
yes, it sees more here.
So yeah, you can see the plunging marks in the trench there.
Right. And again, they were shaping the tip of this to be obelisk-esque.
Yes.
And then here's a test pit. Or that's what they're called.
Yeah.
They're
digging
how
far that thing
deeper down to check the quality of the stone below. Obeliskian, as the watcher says. Yeah, there's another look into that on the left of the tip there. And then down on the right.
I hadn't really thought about the difference in what looks like the ice cream scooping of the bottom of a trench versus this plunging pattern.
And if you watch Ben's recent video on this, he goes through a lot of this stuff too and talks about the scoop marks. And the guy who dug this out talked about it like it was, he said that it looks like just like they were using an ice cream scoop. But they found lots of the dolerite, is that right? The pounding stones in this area, I think. But so when you go to this quarry, the first thing they make you do is watch a propaganda video. Basically, it's like, this is how, you're all forced to, before you're allowed in the quarry, you go into this area and you sit down and you watch this video on a little screen that shows you the methods that they think that they used. And basically they're showing you them pounding on this granite with these stone balls that are, I don't know, the size of a
cantaloupe size.
Yeah, a cantaloupe size.
Sometimes bigger.
Right. What's interesting, though, is that the vast majority of these pounding stones that were found were broken, split, busted. And the person who, dug these things out of there was asking, like, well, how would you, if you were using these by hand, how are you going to break them like this? They're very hard. So that's a question. And to me, this just doesn't look like the result that you would get from that kind of work.
No.
This is some kind of machine tool. Some sort of tool. I don't know what the tool was, but yeah, this is another look down the side and at the scoops at the bottom. You're right. Versus the way it plunges and then the kind of scooping at the bottom. So you think that
we'll
could
see
be
the scoop marks in the stairway looking things.
Yeah.
Like they're actually going, they're making this scoop, it looks like.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's just a much bigger, more blunt tip.
Yeah.
That right there.
This. So this is in a different area of the quarry. We weren't actually allowed to go down into these trenches alongside the obelisk or get on top of it or anything at all.
We might hurt it.
Yes.
You could hurt the
You
granite.
could possibly, might break it.
It's fragile stuff.
So over in this area of the quarry, we were actually allowed to kind of climb around down in the trenches where they were clearly excavating enormous blocks of stone for some reason, and again, didn't finish. So here you see a stair-step kind of scooping. It's
Also
interesting
has
how
some plunges in it.
clean this line is, and then, going around, and then this goes down the wall and across the bottom, underneath the block, around the top, what's the bottom of the block, and then up the sides. It's crazy how these lines are continuous. Here's another look at it. We're climbing around in the trench next to this big piece that they were excavating out. So you can see these lines. They go up, they go down, they go across the bottom of the trench, underneath, because they were already digging beneath this one, and then across the bottom of the block, and then up the side of the block.
The work, yeah. That's what I call it.
The work, yeah. Here's scoop lines, plunge lines going down the side of the work. Or maybe that's the outside. I don't know. Not sure which side I'm on there.
Yeah, I don't know.
So this is showing you beneath. They were already cutting underneath it. And this is interesting. I wonder when this happened. There's a fracture here.
Oh, yeah.
This may be why they didn't finish. I don't know. But it kind of looks like that would be at the bottom. So maybe they were like, maybe that's where they wanted to break it. Not sure. So this shows you how, and these are very regular. They're not all the same width, these scoop marks that go down the sides and across the bottom of the trench, but they're very close. They have a symmetry to them. So this goes, so what tool can do this? That goes around and then up the underside of the block.
Now that angle right there at the sharpest angle at the point where it's,
right here,
it's reaching the very base of the work and then starting to cut onto the upper part, the ceiling of this little overhang.
Yeah.
Shows you that thing is not square tipped.
Right.
So it's the different tool than the plunger.
Yeah.
The plunge tool obviously has this squarish, blunt face to it, and that's how it. Unless it's just a smaller scoop and it's just doing a scoop every time to get those little square.
Yeah, I don't know.
But kind of, we were talking about it being a plunge. If it was just a single rod that's squared, and it's just somehow grinding away the stone or whatever, it would leave that squarish depression. But this, because of that angle that you see under there, it's not the same tool. This is a different tool. I'm thinking it's probably more of a wedge or a chisel tipped shape type of thing, because it can make these tight corners.
Yeah.
I don't know what the tool is,
either.
obviously, but I'm just saying that does indicate that it can't be like a square piece. Like how do you get that tight?
And
corner?
also, if you're using pounding stones, it seems ridiculous that these huge ridges would be left.
Yeah.
You know, this would be the first thing you would attack with your pounding stone if you got down in here the next day.
I mean, you wouldn't even bother with that because it's so far away from the work. What do you need to attack that for?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was another thing, that the fact that there are these giant depressions in places where you didn't need to do all that work.
Oh, I see what you mean. Like, you wouldn't even have dug this deep
to leave that ridge.
Yeah. Yeah. This seems like excess.
Oh, yeah. That's definitely excess.
Yeah. Yeah, this is another look at it. Look how this thing comes down the wall at an angle, you know, goes around the bottom here. I mean, you can see it does look like multiple
scoop
attempts. But the lines are just continuous. It's amazing. And then this does go up and then up the face of the work. And I love how there's this slight there's an indication that they were following this
white line
in the stone. You know, this is it's like, what is the operator way up high on top of the quarry somewhere? Can he see that? Like, how does he even, yeah.
Can the tool sense that it's a different material?
Yeah.
So look at the right side there. Go where the demarcation is, where it looks like a different take, right? You go down boom.
Here. Yeah.
Well, right there.
Yeah.
Look at how it continues along the trench in that way too. Like when you go along the trench, it does look like they stop each time right there. So that I'm wondering if, you know, thinking of an articulating tool, it's going straight to a certain point, and that's where the tool then changes direction.
Yeah.
So not necessarily like, oh, let's take it out and take a second take, because you wouldn't do that exactly on every...
Right. It's just wild to look at this. It's like, what were they using to do this?
I love analyzing it like this, though, because I'm done with the Dolerite pounders idea, and I don't care if I'm saying it right. Stone balls, no.
Pounding stones.
I just like, I think of this articulating tool that can somehow quickly grind this stuff away.
Yeah.
Or in a machine manner, grind this stuff away without destroying the tool tip.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that regular mark going back along the channel there looks to me like, well, this is where the tool changes angle. So it's like you reach that depth, and then the operator changes the angle of the tool and starts to move in a different direction. So that's like...
Yes, it's a continuous scoop, but they're changing the angle of the tool.
Yeah, so it's more regular on the surface where they're not ever having to change the angle. You can see this nice, clean sweep coming down. But where the angle has to change, you can see they change angle once, they go a little bit, they change again, they go a little bit, they change again and go a little bit, and they do this over and over, and it's a little segmented.
Yeah.
And that's just the way I look at it.
I agree. And again, back to the theme of this presentation, why didn't they finish? Ooh. Cut that one out.
Yeah, I have to apologize for all the coughing and sniffling and stuffy nose and sneezing and whatnot. It's just fighting off some serious allergies or a cold or something here.
Yeah. So they didn't finish this job. A lot of work was put into cutting this thing out of here. A lot of material was removed, and they never finished. Okay. Now, let's go back down the Nile, up north to the Serapeum. You can see that I didn't measure the distance here, but there's where Giza is, and the Serapeum's pretty close to it. Not much to look at on the surface. It's just really a hole out in the desert. And all I'm going to show you here, we're just going to go through a bunch of pictures of boxes. But notice the scooping on these things. And also, most of them are open. That one's opened. The lid has been pushed towards the camera here. This one has been pushed away towards. But notice these. And it's difficult to take pictures in here because it's dark. But here's a scoop. You can see these scoop. These are very fine, and they're polished. Interesting. The scoops themselves are polished. Let's go through a bunch here. Look at, and I love the, what this discontinuity.
This vein right there of some
veins.
other material,
Yeah.
some other crystal in that granite. Yeah.
You're right.
And the scooping on the edges there.
Right.
There's one box that has like an entire lower corner is just gone. Like they just cut the corner off.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, some big scoops taken out here, but the scoops have been polished themselves, but they didn't remove them. So they wanted these, they wanted these sort of prism shapes. It's clear. The lines on these are unbelievably beautiful, but there's all these strange scoop marks. Like somebody had a giant scooping machine, again, like we saw in the quarry, like we saw elsewhere, that could just remove this stone almost effortlessly, and then they polished it without flattening it further. Like they wanted the overall size. Like in other words, if you'd have flattened this completely where the scoops would be out, it would make the lid thinner. So they didn't do that.
Yeah, so they're beautiful, yet they are far from perfect. And we did see some boxes were incredibly perfect.
Yeah.
So it seems that in the case of the Serapeum, the exterior form was, although in many cases highly polished, they didn't care that it was asymmetrical because there were random scoop marks and some corners cut off and different bevels in certain places.
But this picture we're looking at here, it shows you the scooping at the edges. Kyle's hand is on it right here. But then you just see these unbelievably clean lines running down the top of the lid. Like they were doing precision work, but they didn't care.
In some cases, those lines were a little wavy.
Yeah,
but
they'd
they
be
were
wavy,
like,
yes.
They were like this, it's like...
But look at that.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Just, and again, the pictures don't do the size justice. I've got a few in here that'll kind of give you the idea of the scale of some of these boxes, and I guarantee you that they're much bigger than you think they are when you're looking at these images right now. There's one with a huge amount taken out of the top. So that changes the line here.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like
they scooped a lot of material. Right. Didn't matter. But it's still overall they're looking for this prism shape.
Yes.
Just moving through the pictures
they're just
here.
Beautiful. I just love them so much.
I tried to
never thought I would love stone box as much as I do.
I tried to take a picture of every box, so I think I've got a photograph, several maybe two of each box here. And this one, they took the corner off the back of the lid there. And you can see on some of these there's pry marks. Mm-hmm. And this is interesting.
Those, I think, are very new.
Yes, these are new.
I mean, not very new because the boxes were all open when they were found.
Yeah. There's one where they took a big chunk out of the front corner. So they beveled off this entire front face here.
Yeah.
So it's like they were after integrity. Mm-hmm. So that you can see the layering of importance here. First thing that they're looking for is this general prism shape for the lid, and then the rectangular shape of the box. But more important than that is the integrity of the stone. So you scoop out fractures, bad parts of the stone. In this case, the entire front corner is beveled off.
Now,
this one's broken.
I've heard the idea that they cored out the boxes and then they cut the bottom off, and the bottom became the lid. How do we know that? Is that?
I'm not sure how we know that. That's a good question. This gives you some scale.
God, that's a lid, dude. Just sticking off of that thing.
God. So this picture, for people listening, Kyle is walking beneath the lid of one of these boxes. The lid is probably a foot above his head, maybe more.
Now that's the short end of the box that I'm on. That's got to be.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. So the length of the box is going way back into the tunnel.
That's
yes,
right.
You can tell by the arch of the ceiling there.
Yeah.
God.
They're not all this big, but this one is absolutely gigantic.
Yeah, and you can see the bottom corner of the box part. They just cut that off.
Yeah.
I don't know if you said that already. But.
This one also gives you some scale. So you can see, you can walk beneath this lid. You only have to duck a little bit, or maybe not. It's real close to your head when you walk beneath it. This is the one with the writing on it. This is how they date.
And the floor is
all the
raised
boxes. That's
as
right.
well.
You're standing on this one. This is the one where that's the only box in the place that's designed for tourists to be able to go down in and walk around it. And it's because it's got this scratched graffiti on the thing. Right. The rest of them, you're not supposed. So in this picture, Kyle's doing something extremely illegal, and so am I because I'm down there too. So this one, it's made for you to walk around it. That's why they put the wooden floor there, which is why the box is, it's not as tall. In other words, the people are taller in this picture than they would be. Here's a picture of our buddy Mo sitting, leaning up against a lid.
Yeah, this is a roughed out lid.
A roughed out lid set aside. So again, back to the theme of job incomplete, unfinished.
God, that lid is enormous.
Here's another box. I put this one in. Different style. This may be more recent. It's not really the same as the other ones. I don't know, but I put this one in there to show you scale because Kyle gets to the other end of it. Here he is standing on another unfinished box. That shows you how huge they are and how small the interior space is compared to the exterior size of the box, right? Yeah. It's still a big interior space, but it's those walls are thick.
Mm-hmm. They're at least a foot thick.
Right. Here you can see on this unfinished lid that the scoops have already been taken out of it in some cases. And this is just to show you, now we're looking down one of the hallways of the tunnels themselves. And so keep in mind, like we've said many times on the show, the Serapeum is a series of tunnels beneath that's cut out of the bedrock. So the question is how do they move these boxes around in these hallways? It's not like you can put them in there before the tunnels are covered over because they cut them directly out of the bedrock. So here's a box sitting in a hallway without its lid. I wonder if this might be the box for the lid. This is the
box for the lid. Yes, it is. Yeah.
So you can see it's unfinished. It's rough. And you can see that there's not a whole lot of room.
But they did leave it to one side so you could walk past it.
Right. And again, we're standing on a raised walkway. We're not this walkway is a modern wooden construction with, floor lighting. So the box itself is actually bigger than what you see in this picture. Here's me past it. I'm looking back in the direction. So here, and then I walk past it and take this picture looking back. There's Kyle up on top of it. So that again shows you the scale of the thing. And then I've got this video where I just walk up to it. This is another attempt to show scale.
And yeah, again,
it's taller than me.
We don't know how, yes, it is, but we don't even know how. You're looking up there at the edge.
Yeah, look up. Then I go around the side to show you how narrow a passage it is between the box and the wall. You got to kind of squeeze through here to get to the other side. It's very close to the wall. On one side, it's so close you can't move through. But yes, Kyle's right. It's pushed away, and then I back up and he jumps on top of it. So again, it shows you how big this thing is. There we go.
And yeah, the floor is built up probably a foot off of the original floor. So it's even, I don't know.
That's right. So I'm going to go back here. And again, I just want to finish. This is the concept. They didn't finish the job. This box is sitting in the hallway. It was clearly in the midst of being transported somewhere in this complex. And its lid is elsewhere, also being transported in.
They were going to put it somewhere and then polish it
in place and put the lid on it. And they didn't finish the job. Something happened. This box is in the middle of the hallway and it hasn't been moved in thousands of years.
Yeah.
Because you can't move it.
It's mind-boggling.
I finished off with a couple of pictures of the graffiti. Now, Standard Model will tell you that the people who made these boxes wrote this stuff on there, but Yusuf points this out multiple times. If you've watched Ben, UnchartedX, you've seen this multiple times. But the quality of these glyphs and these lines, I mean, they're, it's not bad, but it just doesn't match the work. See how wavy the lines are? They're not polished. They're clearly cut into the polished surface. You can see that whoever did this, they were trying to do a good job, but they just couldn't match the quality of the stone itself. It's graffiti. Oh yeah, and here's a picture. I tried to take a couple of pictures of the mirror polish on the bottom of this lid, and you can kind of see it, how it's reflecting the back wall here. You see the reflection here. It's so well polished that it's like a mirror. And there's Kyle putting a laser to it. I'd like to be able to do this. How do you mount that thing to make the laser go across, where it's right at the edge? You did a pretty good job. But yeah, when Kyle was doing this with the laser, you could see that there were that it wasn't perfectly
there
flat.
Were minute changes in the surface.
Yeah.
It wasn't perfectly flat. So the laser right there just stops. It's hitting a high spot.
Right.
I was thinking about these when we were going through this presentation.
Yeah. So to finish this up, this concept of unfinished, of people using anomalous tools and anomalous stonework and enormous blocks and not finishing the job. You see this around the world. So what we're looking at here is Peru. This picture is from Ben, again, from UnchartedX. This is Ollantaytambo. This is the Temple of the Sun. I'm not sure what they call it, but you can see this is in Peru. So we see these same sort of vertical. Now, this is not granite. Okay. So I do want to point that out.
What is this?
I think this is limestone.
What?
Yeah, I don't think this is granite.
Okay.
This is like Peruvian. Well, I don't know, actually.
I don't know about
maybe
that.
I'm wrong. But you can see these vertical lines. We recognize this scoop style from what we were looking at in the quarry, all this stuff in Egypt. But you see it here, and then there's these strange patterns as well. But this project was started. It's megalithic. It's enormous, and they didn't finish it. Here's some blocks lying around. Some of them in the middle of being transported. Huge nubs on them. Some of them are not even nubs. It's a whole, there's a bar going across the entire block on one side. These are laying all over the place, clearly in the process of being moved. This is a wall, but it was just not completed.
I could see that the purpose of that little long nub might be because you're going to lay floor tiles on that.
Could be, yeah.
But anyway, I don't know.
Again,
so cool.
Look at where the nubs are around this entryway or whatever this is, like a window or a portal or a door. There's nubs all around it on the blocks on it, and then elsewhere there's not really. Like these were possibly
basically in their finished form.
In their finished form. Now somebody has come along and it's missing some of the upper blocks. So this is, again, you see the two styles. This is Inca and maybe even modern repair work here. But up here where they were still working on it, and you see giant blocks laying all over the hillside. And then there's nubs all around this portal entryway, but nowhere else. Like these blocks were needed. And then the size of the blocks around this thing, they increases. I don't know. I just see all this interesting stuff about this. It's
for
really
sure.
cool.
The doorways, the blocks get bigger.
Right.
It's the same for the pyramids. Wherever the doorway courses are, the doorway courses are much thicker than the rest of the courses.
That's right. Yeah. This is something else. This is also in Peru. I don't know where exactly. This is another picture from Ben. He sent me this when I asked him for stuff. But you kind of see the scooping, these long... what is this? What even was this? It's not a quarry. Were they removing material? Like, what was happening here?
Yeah.
Do you see these scoop marks?
They might have been quarrying that.
They could have been, yeah.
Yeah. It's awesome.
But again, I just want people to recognize that these, some of this has got sharp lines, which is interesting. And this too, these long scoops have sharp lines, but elsewhere you see similar stuff to what we saw in the quarry in Egypt.
Yeah.
So I think this is another picture from Ben. I was wondering about this. Is the top left puffy here?
Yes.
Pillowy.
That's what it looks like. Yeah.
Like they hadn't finished the top part of this, but they'd finally finished this, and you've got all the blocks going.
It's like they may be about to set another course, and they just haven't cut.
They haven't
specific
they were
angles.
finishing them in place. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And look at the stone they were using. Full of all these holes. I don't know. Maybe this is recent. Maybe this is erosion since the building. I don't know. And to finish off Peru here, these are pictures from Ben. That is a stone on its way to a site. So they had brought it down from some mountain, and it's going to go up another mountain, but it's just sitting here in the roadway. And again, no one's ever moved it because they weigh too much.
What kind of shark tooth freaking like
the road goes around it. I don't know what that is.
Some kind of this. That is the strangest looking car smell thing I've ever. It makes your car smell like a monster.
Yes, it's full of squash bugs.
It looks like it's got shark teeth all around it or something. Sorry.
Yeah, it's clearly a block, but it's just out here in the road, and the road goes around it because you've got a dozer and you're making a road, but you still don't want to move that thing, so you make the road go around it. Okay. Easter Island. Unfinished. Moai. In the quarry still. And they have the faces on them.
How many of them are there?
Several. Look at that monster.
Yeah, look at his arms coming down.
Yeah.
Right there. Oh.
And he's tilted. Again, at an angle.
Yeah.
I love how similar this looks. No, this is a different kind of rock. But I love how similar this is to the Unfinished Obelisk, sort of. He's tilted at an angle. The top part is up high, and the bottom part is down low. And then I don't know. They've already cut the face out of it, at least roughly.
Giant trenches around it.
Yes.
I'd love to see the bottom of those trenches. Like
here's another one. I mean, they were putting details on this guy. Unless these were added later, I don't know. Like maybe nobody finished it and somebody else later comes in like, well, let's just go ahead and make it into a face. That's possible. Again, we're looking through that. Here's one out there cutting out of the side.
Oh, wow, that's cool. I've never seen that. And then this one laying down the other way.
Yeah, there's one here.
Is that still attached to the bedrock too?
I don't know if this one's still attached or not. But yeah, there's two of them. And he's got his nose and his lips and his chin, I mean, like they were not cutting like blocks out and then shaping them in place. They were
so it's
making the faces.
It's a slightly different. I mean, at least on the obelisk, they were making the pyramidian top.
Yeah,
it's like these are kind of giving you the rough out of the face.
Yeah.
Well, hell, maybe they finished it there in place. I don't know.
Isn't that interesting? That they haven't even cut him all the way out of the.
Yeah.
They don't have his right side cut out yet, and they're already making noses, and it's amazing.
But in the case of the granite pillars, they would cut these giant blocks, right, and then carve them down into a. They wouldn't cut the pillar shape out.
Yeah, I don't know. Do we have any pillars still in the?
I don't know. Maybe they did.
Baalbek. Again. Didn't finish the job.
Now, are these the ones that they've more recently excavated?
Yes, that
one looks still attached.
This is the famous one.
The one on the bottom left there still looks like it's attached to the bedrock.
Some of these they may be still attached. But they were already cutting, it's like you put this on top of this. Yeah. I don't know what's going on here. This block is not attached to this surface. They just didn't, the archaeologists didn't remove all the material clearly because but the block is sitting here. So what was happening here? And they didn't finish the job.
Now these are limestone?
Yeah, I think so.
I'd like to see these things up close.
That gives you some
Look
scale.
at the marks on the top edge of that one.
Yeah,
Yeah, those. Wow.
Yeah.
God, those are huge.
Facing. Yeah.
Also tilted.
Right. Tilted. This gives you more scale. I don't even know what's happening here. We need to get to this site and get down in here and look around.
I want to be like that guy.
Yeah.
He's just like, yeah.
Also, I found this interesting. I don't think it's actually square. Maybe this is the camera angle, but it looks like these. You see what I'm saying here? It's like a parallelogram.
Yeah, the end is a little off. Yeah.
Like, in other words,
that may be an optical illusion.
It could be an optical illusion. It's yeah. And there's another one. This one was being transported to the site.
This is definitely what would happen if the Romans cut it out and said it's too big. You would see that they started quarrying off pieces of it.
That's
because
right.
It has nice flat edges, and you've already done all that work.
That's right.
Yeah, what I would have liked to have been there that day that they dropped that. Right? They're trying to get it. Just oh well, let's just go grab another one.
Yeah.
That suggests to me that that whatever rigging situation that they had, they weren't singing them into place. Otherwise, they would have just sung it out of the hole. And no, it was some type of infrastructure that they needed to move it, and they had a specific way that they could move it. And if it fell, it's not worth it to try to go get it because it's out of the range of your instruments or your machines to pick it up.
Yeah.
So you just leave it.
And somebody did come and cut pieces off of it.
That's what I'm talking about. Like that right there is like, I could
it
see
was
the
exposed,
Romans.
yeah.
That one's much closer to the site.
Yeah. Cut some blocks out of that thing.
You don't have to go all the way to the quarry.
They quarried it and it's still mostly there.
Yeah.
It's so big. This is China. Yangshan. Now, I don't know what this is, but they call this a quarry.
It looks like it.
They say that these were supposed to be monuments, but they're too big to have, I don't know. We'll keep looking here, but you'll see the scale of this. It's just completely ridiculous.
But that one looks like a modern quarry would look. You'd have that gigantic sheer face on this wall here.
Yeah, but this is ancient.
I know.
Look at this.
I'm just saying,
Did somebody really intend to move those?
What? The one on the left is still bedrock, right?
No, the story is that these were cut as intending to be single pieces that were going to be moved somewhere into a city to stack up a monument.
Okay.
Look how big this is.
That's cool. Yeah,
I think
that
this
looks like it's attached to the bedrock.
It's definitely attached. I don't think this was, I don't know. To me, this looks like they were making a rock cut thing.
Sculpture.
This was not going to be moved somewhere.
Yeah, I would agree with that. They're quarrying out stuff around it, but they're leaving pieces.
Yeah, except that then you want to know why they're nubs if they never intended to move it.
Yeah, I don't know.
There are nubs on this. It's like, well, just look how gigantic these pieces are.
Nubs have multiple uses.
Yeah.
God, that's cool.
I'm hoping Scotty will be able to get out to this site and get us some pictures.
Yeah, bro. Come on.
Yeah.
So they cut these caves under there? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Do they go all the way through?
Yeah, in some cases they do. Like this one.
Oh, yeah.
So that's not quarrying work, right?
It's carving at least, but
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they use the stones.
Or like Watcher is saying, that's where you put your forklift down underneath.
Yes,
if you have a giant forklift.
Good one. They have it's a trident fork. It's not a forklift, it's a trident lift.
That's right. It's got three. Yeah. There's people standing underneath the, What is
left
this?
all those little nubs in there.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. It's
Okay.
just awesomeness is what that is.
It is absolute awesomeness. That's what it is. I completely agree. All right. That's it. They didn't finish the job. That's what I feel like with this site too. It's incomplete. It looks like they had plans.
That's so cool. Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to think like what did some of these rock cut temples look like in their, in the early stages?
Yeah.
Like you're saying, like this could be the beginning of a rock cut temple. This piece that's standing out might have been, some like little antechamber type of thing.
Yeah.
And in the wall over there where they're cutting in, they're doing a sort of a grid pattern to kind of go in.
This is all those
all
nub
those little
things.
standing,
This final picture, this person is standing underneath that.
Yes, there you go. Okay.
So this goes all the way through that.
And then it's open to the top. Yeah.
It's open to the top, and then there's the wall of the quarry or whatever. It's just like, what?
God knows.
What were they doing? And why didn't they finish it?
Yeah, it looks like they were using this similar tools, similar methods.
That's right. So I just wonder.
And they had similar, at least, ideas of what was acceptable to do and not. Right? Like, well, yeah, we can just cut through this and we'll leave these nubs. Like they're making similar choices.
Yeah.
Which suggests that they have similar technology.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
If you were a guy with a diorite ball, you wouldn't make those choices.
That's right. That's right. Well, hope you guys enjoyed that.
Sorry, I stepped on the point. It's unfinished.
Yeah, it's all over the world. You see these. There's probably many more examples that I didn't include. But it looks like all over the world, people were involved in enormous masonry projects, in quarries, building sites, moving giant boxes, huge stones. And then for some reason, they didn't finish the job. And I have to wonder, of course, being, one of the Snake Bros, I have to wonder, did this all happen at the same time? Yeah. That's what you want to know. Like, was this really actually going on 12,000 years ago or 36,000 years ago or whatever? And all of this work stopped. All of this enormous, anomalous work stopped all over the world because of, the onset of the Younger Dryas or one of the meltwater pulses or some other catastrophic event.
Mm-hmm.
And the civilization or civilizations that were doing these projects are almost completely lost to history, and all we have left
but like you
are
said,
these gigantic blocks and these witness marks and these strange tool marks and these huge monuments still in the quarry.
Yeah. And then with the pyramid temples, it's like if there were multiple stages of building, it's like the first building, it's like they stop and then at some point later, way later, they pick up the job again, but they still have the technology.
Yeah.
Because they start casing the insides of these eroded structures.
Yep.
And then it looks like they're using the same stone cutting methods.
That's right. Yeah.
And then at some point it stops again before they even finish that, and then they don't ever use those stone cutting methods ever again.
Right. That's right.
That's wild.
Didn't finish the job all over the world.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. And we do have some Patreon producers for this week. For executive producers, we have Philip Baklamov, Matt Shy, Peter Shell, and Zachariah Baker, and Frank M. Also,
thank you all so much.
Yes, supporting us at the Ascended Snake Force Master level, $72 a month. And associate executive producers from Patreon this week, Daniel Gandy, Dave Cortes, and Patrick Hicks, patron saint.
Yeah, patron saint.
That's right. And you guys
Thanks so much.
Yes, thank you all so much. And you guys can get a hold of us, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. Check out the website, brothersoftheserpent.com, for all the podcast-related stuff, including, if you want to support the show, the Pyramid Scheme. You can do that through Patreon or PayPal. Patreon, you do monthly, and you get access to Patreon content. We do occasionally do Patreon episodes. Sometimes they are continued conversations of episodes we did that week, and other times they're not. They're just random thoughts.
Yeah.
You know, we decide, let's talk about this on Patreon. And if you want to do a one-time donation, you can do that through PayPal. Thank you guys so much. And check out the Discord. You can also get to that through the website. That's run by Jeff and a bunch of admins, which we really appreciate that. And the Discord is over 1,000 people. And sometimes we stream live to the Discord. So if you join in on that, if you join the Discord, you can sometimes hear the show done live, and you get the inside baseball of all this shit talking we do in between the segments.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how we fix the mistakes that never happened.
That's right.
On the show.
That's right. 0 mistakes, and you'll get to hear how there are definitely 0 mistakes if you join the Discord and hear one of the stream shows. And yeah, thanks to Ben from UnchartedX and to the guys from Grimerica and all of you listeners out there. We love you guys.
Always have.
Always will.
Good night, Adamu.
Get back to work.